Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of EDTalks, everyone's favorite podcast. I hope you all are having an amazing day wherever you are, and I think let's just all relax, light some incense, and drink some coffee together for the next few minutes. This time today, I'm going to be continuing the Democratic candidate for the 2020 presidential race. Last time we covered Biden versus Warren, and now I'm going to do another three pretty popular candidates, and that would be Bernie Sanders, Kamala Harris, and Beto O'Rourke. Hopefully I pronounced that last one right. Kind of tricky. So I think out of all of these, Sanders is definitely the most left. Kamala Harris is in the middle between the three, and Beto is still leaning left, but he's more to the middle. So, what are some things these candidates actually agree on? Well, they all think the death penalty should be abolished, just completely get rid of it, along with the Electoral College, getting rid of that voting system. They also all agree on abortions and abortion limits. They all say there should be few limits, if any. And those are kind of their big points where they all agree. Some agree, two agree on some topic, but the third might disagree. For example, Sanders and Harris both want to slash the defensive budget. However, Beto wants to actually boost the defensive budget, and both Sanders and Beto want to boost taxes on the wealthy, and Harris has not talked about wanting to do that. So what are their main differences? Well, one where they all vary is college, how students should be paying for college. I think it's a worn-out record. Obviously, Bernie Sanders wants college to be free and just cancel student debt. That's been talked about a lot. So, what does Harris and Beto think? So, Harris thinks that students shouldn't have to take on student debt, but that doesn't mean that college prices would be free. So, I'm not sure who would take on the student debt, but college prices would still stay the same, but students would not have to take on that amount of student debt. Beto doesn't really want college to be free, nor does he want students to not have to take on student debt, but he says that America should expand / fix student debt programs in our country, so instead of actually making college cheaper, or canceling student debts, or making students not have to take them on, it's just helping them pay for those student debts and expanding those programs. So the next thing that they all kind of disagree on are guns. So Sanders wants a voluntary buyback program, like Joe Biden's I talked about in the first podcast in this series. Harris wants an outright ban on assault weapons, such as Elizabeth Warren, but Beto O'Rourke wants a mandatory buyback program. So what's kind of the difference of a voluntary and mandatory? Well, a voluntary is you can choose whether to give up your gun or not. Mandatory is the U.S. will take the gun and compensate you. So, if Beto became president and passed a mandatory buyback program, that would mean that the government would come take people's guns. I'm assuming probably only semi-automatic rifles. So the next thing they all disagree on is Medicare. So, again, I think it's pretty obvious. Bernie Sanders supports universal Medicare for everybody. He was kind of one of the first political pioneers in Congress to be talking about that. Kamala Harris, she doesn't exactly like Medicare for all. She would accept Medicare for some. So she'll support Medicare for all, but if she can't get anything passed, she would accept Medicare for some people. Beto, on the other hand, he opposes Medicare for all, but he does want to expand coverage. So not everyone will have Medicare, but the coverage will be expanded to more people. The last thing they kind of disagree on is the environment. So, Sanders really wants to impose government regulations, end fracking, and take very large steps in helping the climate change crisis we are currently going through. Kamala Harris would rather tax carbon emissions, and so would Beto O'Rourke. So they would take less steps, and O'Rourke also wants to do the thing that Biden wants to do is to pay farmers for using climate-friendly practices. They all have varying degrees. Sanders wants to completely put government regulations, Harris wants to tax, and O'Rourke wants to pay farmers in order to practice more climate-friendly practices. So these are kind of the three outside the main bubble of the Biden versus Warren race. Sanders has been gaining some popularity over the past few months, and so has Beto O'Rourke. He's exploded in the media. He's been talked about a lot recently, which has caused his polling popularity to rise up, especially with his hard gun laws of the mandatory buyback program for semi-automatic rifles. So these are kind of the three that are a little outside the bubble. If you want to kind of examine these candidates more in full, because I didn't talk about every single one of their views on every single topic, Politico actually has a great site for that. If you typed in something like Bernie Sanders policies or Joe Biden policies, Politico should be one of the first things that comes up. They have a list of every single issue the candidate has talked about, what they would do for it, and it also shows candidates with similar views. You can do it for any single candidate in the election. If you're voting, I would highly, highly recommend checking it out, because it is a very helpful tool. It is brief though, so you will want to do outside research, but it provides good descriptions on where people stand and kind of their history with the subject, what people agree with them. It's just a very, very helpful tool that I feel more people should look at. So that's the end of our podcast for this time. I hope you all enjoyed this little Democratic candidate presidential 2020 campaign race overview. So that's all I have to say. I hope your incense is smelling great as always. I hope your coffee just tasted amazing while you're listening to this. And I'll be signing off. I'll see you all later, my brothers and sisters.